Conversation with the Candidate continues right now.
Welcome back to Conversation with the Candidate with our presidential candidate, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. We're bringing in our town hall audience of New Hampshire voters right now. They're going to have questions. I'll have some coming from the online realms as well and might have a follow-up or two. But let's get things started with Deborah White.
Thank you. Good evening, Governor Christie, and thank you for coming back to New Hampshire. My question is, how are you going to become the primary candidate for the GOP over former President Trump?
Go right at him. There's no other way to do it. See, I don't understand how you want to beat someone who is essentially an incumbent, right? He's been our nominee twice, if you're not going to speak directly about him and why you're better than him. And I have to tell you, Deborah, it's what confuses me about some of my fellow colleagues in this race. They don't want to talk about him. They treat him like he's Voldemort in the Harry Potter books. You know, he who shall not be named. They don't want to even talk about him. Look, the fact is that I can talk to you about this in two ways. First is on the substance of his presidency. He promised us that he was going to repeal and replace Obamacare, one of his central promises. He had a Republican Congress his first 2 years, and he didn't get it done. He promised us that he was going to balance the budget in 4 years, because he was a businessman who was going to know how to do that. He added $6 trillion to the national debt in 4 years, the worst fiscal performance of any president in history. And we shouldn't have been surprised, because this is the guy who went bankrupt 3 times in my state running a casino. Who goes bankrupt running a casino, right? I don't understand that. Third, he promised he was going to build, you'll remember, said it right on the stage here in New Hampshire, a big, beautiful wall across the entire border of Mexico, and Mexico was going to pay for it. Well, in 4 years, he got 52 miles of new wall built, 52 miles. And Mexico hasn't given us the first peso, even for those 52 miles, right? So on the key promises that he made us, he failed. And lastly, he said he was going to drain the swamp in Washington. And he's saying the same thing now, right? Oh, send me back and I'll drain the swamp. He didn't drain the swamp, he rearranged it. He rearranged it and then made space for his family, okay? His son's mistress getting paid from campaign money to give a speech on January 6th. His son-in-law Jared and his daughter Ivanka made tens of millions of dollars while they worked in the White House and then left, and 6 months afterwards got $2 billion from the Saudi government. He's spending now $40 million just in the last half year on his own legal fees from money that middle-class Americans donated to him for him to be able to run for president. A billionaire. How about this? Sell the plane. How about sell Trump Tower? How about sell one of your 15 golf courses to pay the legal bills that are only happening, Deborah, because of his conduct? So how will I beat Donald Trump? Try that on for size. We'll start there.
Thank you.
Next question comes from George Adams.
Governor Christie, thanks for coming today.
Thank you, George.
My question is, what is your strategy for dealing with China, and how would you respond to threats from China against Taiwan?
First on China, we need to reset the entire relationship. This is a relationship that started back in the 70s, 50 years ago, with Richard Nixon going to China and wanted to bring China into the community of nations and wanted them to develop this billion-plus population into an economic force. Well, we helped them do that over the last 50 years. And in return, what they've done for us is steal our intellectual property, spy on us, and try to undermine us all around the world. So they're not the little cousin anymore who we're trying to help grow up. They're now the number 2 economy in the world. So we need to reset the relationship and say to them, look, we're now dealing as peers. And peers deal with each other in ways that are fair and direct. So they need to help us on intellectual property and stop stealing our stuff. Develop your own or buy it. Second, we need to demand that they start doing something about the climate. You know, we've dropped our carbon output in this country 1 billion tons a year for the last 10 years. In the same 10-year period, you know what China's done? Increased at 5 billion tons a year in China. We're not going to deal with the climate issue in this world if only America is doing their part. China needs to do theirs. And on Taiwan, this starts with what's going on in Ukraine right now, because the Chinese are funding the Russians by buying their oil and funding this war. This is a proxy war between us and China. If we don't stick with the Ukrainians and help them get to victory by supplying them not with men and women, but with the arms that they need to fight the Russians, then we will be sending American men and women to Taiwan. Excuse me. And if you don't believe me on a humanitarian or democratization basis, believe me on this. 2/3 of all the semiconductors in the world are manufactured in Taiwan. Do we want the Chinese Communist Party controlling that? So those are the fights we're going to have. And I think you know me, and you know that I will be sitting across from President Xi and not fawning over him like Donald Trump did and say that he's straight out of Hollywood Central Casting. The only thing he's out of Hollywood Central Casting on is a brutal communist dictator who limits the number of children his people can have and sends Muslims to concentration camps to kill them. I'll deal with him like the person that he is. Direct, honest, and tough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question comes from Jack Farrington.
Governor Christie, if you are elected president, what will you do to improve the education system in our country?
We need to change it from top to bottom, K to 12. 1/3 of the K to 12 students in our country right now do not read at grade level. I want you to listen to that. 1/3 of our children don't read at grade level in the United States of America. And the reason that's happened is because we've allowed the teachers union in this country to dominate what's happened and make all the decisions regarding what happens in the classroom. In the Christie administration, I'm going to end that the same way I ended it in New Jersey. And the way to do it is to empower parents. We spend about $800 billion a year, every year, on K-12 education. I want to put that money in the hands of parents. Let them decide. If you like your public school, I went to public school. I'm a public school graduate, K-12. I got a great education. You want to go to public school? Go to public school. You want to send your children to parochial school, private school? Send them where you think they're going to get the best education and set up competition among all these schools because of that. Believe me, if they're competing for your business, they're going to perform better like any business performs better if they compete for the business. This system has failed us now. And it's not just failing urban kids. It's now failing kids in every corner of our country. And so it's about empowering parents, setting up educational freedom accounts for them, and letting them decide where their children can best be educated.
Quick follow-up for you, Governor. Should
Sure.
there be a national parental rights bill that you would sign?
Depends on what's in it, Adam, but let me tell you, I think what we need to do is to release that money to parents and unleash them on the educational system. If we do, I think we'll get better education and better students as a result.
Next question comes from James Zanfania.
Hello, Governor. Welcome to New Hampshire.
Thank you, sir.
If elected, what would your administration do to address the ongoing opioid epidemic?
I just left a drug treatment center in northern New Hampshire before I came here. I was the chairman of the President's Commission on Opioid Crisis and Drug Abuse. And in my own state, we set up all kinds of new programs to deal with this problem. Here's the first most important thing. Drug addiction is a disease. It's a disease like heart disease, like diabetes, like cancer. It needs to be treated like a disease. Every life is precious. And people who make the mistake of falling into drug abuse, become addicted, now suffer from a disease that can be treated. We need to make treatment much more broadly available all across this country. Second, we need to keep talking about it because there's a stigma attached to it, as you know. People are afraid to ask for help because they don't want to admit that they have this problem. But if, God forbid, you had cancer or heart disease or diabetes, you wouldn't hesitate to ask anybody about it, right? And talk about it so you could get the best treatment and the moral and emotional support that you need to work your way through the crisis of disease. Third, on my first day as president, I will sign an executive order to send National Guard to the southern border with the sole task of interdicting fentanyl. 110,000 overdose deaths last year. It is now the leading killer of men 18 to 34. And this poison, by the way, is being sent to us by the Chinese through the Mexican drug cartels. I would make it very clear to the president of Mexico, you've got 6 months to get those drug cartels under control. And if you don't, I will use the American military and the American intelligence community to bring those Mexican drug cartels under control. And also, agenda item with the Chinese will be, stop sending these chemicals over here. It's war. You are committing acts of war by sending those precursor chemicals to these drug cartels because you know they're being sent to kill Americans. You do that, we'll respond in kind.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Governor, you were in law enforcement. Where do you draw the line between criminal conduct and the drugs that are driving the criminal conduct?
Profit. Look, if people are drug users and they become addicted, we don't accomplish anything by sending them to prison. Because let me make sure you know, the drugs get into prison too. And addicts stay addicts when they're in prison unless we do something to change that. In New Jersey, one of the things I did was change the criminal justice reform, allowed us to close two prisons. One of them we reopened as a drug treatment prison so that folks who were in the state system who had a drug problem could get treatment in the last year of their sentence. So when they came out, it lowered the recidivism rate by 30% for those people and restored their lives. But the people who were making a profit off this, Adam, we cleared out those other jail cells for them. You're gonna make a profit at addicting and killing our citizens, you're gonna go to jail for it. That's where I draw the line.
Next question comes from Bev Cotton.
Hey, Bev.
Nice to see you. Nearly a quarter of the residents of the state of New Hampshire are on Medicare. We are the second oldest state in the union by population age. We've heard a lot about lack of solvency for the program. So if elected, what would you do to preserve health care security for roughly 300,000 Granite Staters?
You know, I thought the most disgusting part of Joe Biden's State of the Union address was when he stood up and said, is everybody going to promise here that we're not going to touch Social Security or Medicare? And both parties stood up and cheered. A room full of liars and cowards. Because in 11 years, Social Security is going to go broke, and it will mean an automatic 25% cut in benefits for everyone who's on it. And in 10 years, Medicare will go broke. And it will mean the same type of reduction. We cannot have that. We've made a promise to people who have paid into the system for years. And so I'm the only candidate who's talking about this and says we're going to save and strengthen Social Security and Medicare. And there's only three possibilities to do it, right? It's dealing with retirement age and eligibility age. It's dealing with means testing, and it's dealing with taxes. It's the only way to do it. It goes three ways. I think we already pay more than enough in taxes, and I suspect most people in New Hampshire do as well. So we need to deal with eligibility age for Medicare and means testing for that and Social Security. Now, I'm not talking for people in their 50s or 60s or older. It's too late for them to adjust to those changes. But for people in their 30s and 40s, we need to say to them, here's the great news. You're probably going to live till you're 90. Great news. Congratulations. Here's the bad news. You have to work longer. You're not going to be eligible for Social Security as early as you are now or for Medicare as early as you are now. You have to continue working. But by doing those things, we help to make the system more solvent. And we give them the time they need to prepare for it. And we don't hurt the people who are depending on it every day now. We give people the time to prepare, and we give other folks the benefit of the bargain they came for. Means testing. Look, I'm pretty confident Mark Zuckerberg doesn't need Medicare or Social Security. Warren Buffett, Elon Musk. We start up there and let's start working our way down from there in terms of how much money is it enough to say, okay, you can pay more for your Medicare or you don't need to take your Social Security. Yes, I know you paid into the system. So have I. But if there are lots of things that we pay for in the government that we don't get a direct benefit from. I'm fortunate in my life, I've never had to be on food stamps. But I paid taxes to make sure that others had the opportunity who needed it to eat, that they didn't go hungry in this country. So it's not like this is unprecedented to do. So we need to do some means testing as well. We need to look at that. So those are the two things that I would look at to try to ensure that we strengthen them and save these programs for the long term, for the people who are on them now and depend on them, and give enough time for the people who are going to be on them someday to prepare for the changes that need to be made to keep it solvent. Because the other alternative, of course, is to take these 20, 30, and 40-year-old people and raise their taxes significantly. I'd rather have them have the money to help prepare for their retirement more responsibly than for the government to take the money and do what they might do with it. Because you know we can't always trust what the government's going to do with that money.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bev.
So just a quick follow-up for you. That's a partial privatization, perhaps, for the younger generation?
No. I don't think it's a partial privatization. You keep the system the way it is. You just make their eligibility later, so they can't get into it until they're older. Believe me, every year that you extend that, you save billions of dollars. And so that's the plan, not privatization. I don't think the American people want privatization, but what it does provide is for those younger people, like I've done too, and I'm 60 now, so I don't think I'm younger anymore, as much as I'd like to pretend I am. I've had access to IRA and 401k and been able to save money for my retirement. They're going to have to more aggressively do that to supplement those years in between. If they want to leave earlier but not start collecting Social Security until a little bit later, they'll have their IRA and 401k money to help them during that gap.
Next question from JP Marzullo.
Hey, JP.
Hi, Governor. How are you today?
I'm great.
So what made you switch your support of Trump?
The moment, JP, there were a number of steps along the way that I spoke out publicly against things that he was doing. The perfect phone call in Ukraine I thought was not quite so perfect. When you're blackmailing an ally and using American military weaponry that they need to deter the Russians because you want to get dirt on your political opponent, I don't think that's a good thing. I spoke out against it. But it was election night 2020. When he stood behind the seal of the President of the United States in the East Room of the White House and told the American people that the election was stolen, when he had no basis in fact at all to say it. The worst part of that moment is that the American people look at that and say, see, he's the president. He must know something we don't know. Mm-hmm. He must know it was stolen. And there are still a majority of our party today who believes the election was stolen because he told them it was stolen. It was that moment to me that said he now has put himself and his own ego completely ahead of the country. And when you do that after you've had the privilege to hold the job of President of the United States and you want it again, I'm sorry, that's disqualifying. It's disqualifying for my support, and it's disqualifying for him to be president again. And it's one of the reasons I'm running.
Thank you.
Thanks, JP.
Just a quick follow-up for you, Governor, as we reach the last question here for the televised portion. You had a pretty serious bout with COVID-19. What was that like, and what did you take away from it?
Yeah, I was in the intensive care unit for 7 days. I got COVID in early October of 2020, before there were any FDA-approved treatments and certainly not a vaccine. And the first couple of days of that were pretty awful, to the point where doctors came in and said, you know, you have another day or two like this, we're going to have to intubate you. And fortunately for me, I was willing to try an experimental monoclonal antibody cocktail, and I believe, and it was ultimately approved, but not before I took it, and I think it's ultimately what saved my life. I want you to understand, though, that the worst part of all that is thinking about your family. You know, and it was so isolating. You know, no one came in to see you. You were completely isolated in the intensive care unit. And I remember when the doctors came out and told me that, you know, things weren't going well, I called Mary Pat and I said to her, look, you need to tell them that if they're going to have to do something to me, I'm going to need an hour before they do it so I could FaceTime each one of the kids, because I may not speak to them again. That's a moment that catches your attention. And I think that for all of the families who lost loved ones during all that, it helps me to better relate to what they felt. And I'm just very fortunate that I came through it and I saw the other side. And I'm fortunate my family didn't have to go through the trauma that so many other families in this country had to go through.
That's all the time we have for television. Governor Christie, thank you.
you.
Next week, we're going to have Francis Suarez on Conversation with the Candidate. While we're signing off for television, we do want to remind you that this conversation continues on the digital and online realm, so you can join us there. Have a good night.